Whitey Bulger was a prominent figure in Boston's organized crime scene from the 1970s until the mid-90s when he fled the area. Captured in 2011, he was later found guilty of federal racketeering, extortion, conspiracy in 11 murders. That this story interested you? Come with me, 1929 to 2018, who was Whitey Bulger? James Whitey Bulger embarked upon a life of crime at the age of 14 and had become a prominent figure in Boston's organized crime scene by the late 1970s. From 1975 to 1990, Bulger also served as an FBI informant, tipping off the police to the Patriarca crime family while also building his own crime network. After fleeing the Boston area in 1995, Bulger landed on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list. He was captured in California in 2011 and after a 2-month trial, the notorious crime boss was found guilty of federal racketeering, extortion, conspiracy in 11 murders. Early life Bulger was born James Joseph Bulger Jr. on September 3, 1929, in Dorchester, Massachusetts. One of 6 children born to Catholic Irish-American parents, Whitey, a moniker he was given for his white blonde hair, grew up in a South Boston public housing project. His father worked as a longshoreman. Bulger was a troublemaker as a child, and even lived out the childhood fantasy of running away with the circus when he was 10 years old. Bulger was first arrested when he was 14 years old, for stealing, and his criminal record continued to escalate from there. As a youth, he was arrested for larceny, forgery, assault and battery, and armed robbery and served 5 years in a juvenile reformatory. Upon his release, he joined the Air Force where he served time in military jail for assault before being arrested for going AWOL. Nonetheless, he received an honorable discharge in 1952. Time in Alcatraz. After returning to Boston, Bulger embarked upon a life of crime. His offenses grew increasingly large in scale, culminating in a string of bank robberies from Rhode Island to Indiana. In June 1956, he was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. He ended up serving 9 years, including stints in Atlanta, Alcatraz and Leavenworth. Bulger allegedly served time in Alcatraz because he was discovered making plans to escape from his prison in Atlanta. Looking back fondly at his 3-year stay in Alcatraz, Bulger admitted to CNN, after his 2011 capture, that, if I could choose my epitaph on my tombstone, it would be, "I'd rather be in Alcatraz." Regardless, after he did his time, Bulger returned to Boston to resume his life of crime. He became an enforcer for crime boss Donald Killeen. After Killeen was gunned down in 1972, Bulger joined the Winter Hill Gang, where he quickly rose up in the ranks. A shrewd, ruthless, cunning mobster, Bulger sanctioned numerous killings, including the murders of Spike O'Toole, Holly McGonigal, Eddie Connors, Tommy King and Buddy Leonard. Becoming boss of the Winter Hill Gang by 1979, Bulger had become a preeminent figure in Boston's organized crime scene. That year, Howie Winter, the boss of the Winter Hill Gang, was sent to prison for fixing horse races, and Bulger assumed the gang's leadership. Over the next 16 years, he came to control a significant portion of Boston's drug dealing, bookmaking and loan sharking operations. During this same time, from 1975 to 1990, unbeknownst to even his closest associates, Bulger was an FBI informant. Taking advantage of his brother William's stature in the Massachusetts State Senate and childhood friendships that linked him to members of the police force, Bulger helped bring down the Patriarcas, a New England organized crime family, while simultaneously building a more powerful and arguably more violent crime network of his own. Fugitive life with mistresses Teresa Stanley, Catherine Gregg. In the spring of 1994, the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Massachusetts State Police and the Boston Police Department launched an investigation into Bulger's gambling operation. In early 1995, Bulger and his associate, Stephen Flemmi, were indicted. Bulger, however, managed to slip through the authorities' grasp. According to federal sources, Bulger's FBI handler, longtime friend Special Agent John Connolly, tipped Bulger off to the 1995 indictment, allowing the criminal to flee with his girlfriend, Teresa Stanley. Bulger returned a month later, after Stanley decided that she wanted to return to her children, but fled again soon after with a mistress, Catherine Gregg. In 1999, Bulger was officially named on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list, at one point being designated the Bureau's second most wanted man, behind only Osama bin Laden. A $1 million reward was issued for providing any information leading directly to his arrest. Capture and trial. Bulger's life on the run ended in June 2011, when he was caught and arrested in Santa Monica, California, after a 16-year manhunt. A tipster had notified the FBI that the 81-year-old fugitive and Greg had been living in a rent-controlled apartment as retirees. The FBI had the building manager lure Bulger to the garage of the apartment by telling him the lock on his storage locker was broken. In the garage, Bulger was surrounded by FBI agents and local police officers. He initially insisted he was his alias, Charlie Gasco, according to FBI Special Agent Scott Garilla, until he eventually admitted, "You know who I am, I'm Whitey Bulger." Inside the apartment, law enforcement found 30 guns, more than $822,000 in cash, knives and ammunition, much of which was hidden in the walls. Greg was also captured and, in March 2012, she pleaded guilty to conspiracy to harbor a fugitive, conspiracy to commit identity fraud and identity fraud. In June 2012, she was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Jury selection in Bulger's trial began in early June 2013. Bulger faced a 33-count indictment, including money laundering, extortion, drug dealing, corrupting FBI and other law enforcement officials and participating in 19 murders. He was also charged with federal racketeering for allegedly running a criminal enterprise from 1972 to 2000. Sentenced on August 12, 2013, after a 2-month trial, a jury of 8 men and 4 women deliberated for 5 days and found Bulger guilty on 31 counts, including federal racketeering, extortion, conspiracy in 11 of the 19 murders. They found he was not guilty of 7 murders and could not reach a verdict on 1 murder. Bulger was sentenced to 2 life sentences plus 5 years in prison on November 13, 2013. According to the Chicago Tribune, U.S. District Judge Denise Casper told Bulger that the scope, the callousness, the depravity of your crimes are almost unfathomable during his sentencing hearing. In August 2016, Bulger asked the United States Supreme Court to hear an appeal of his case. A petition to the Supreme Court, filed by Bulger's attorney Hank Brennan, stated that Bulger should have had the opportunity to tell the jury that he was granted immunity by federal prosecutor Jeremiah O'Sullivan, who is now deceased. Mr. Bulger's decision not to testify was not voluntary, rather, the result of the court's erroneous order that he could not raise the immunity defense or refer to his relationships with Department of Justice officials including Jeremiah O'Sullivan in any form or fashion including his own testimony, Brennan wrote in the petition. Death on October 30, 2018, at around 8:20 a.m., Bulger was found unresponsive at a United States penitentiary in Hazleton, West Virginia, where he was recently transferred. Brother and secret son. While Bulger was a distinguished criminal boss in the Boston mob, his younger brother, William Michael "Billy" Bulger, born 1934, built a distinguished career in politics, becoming the longest-running president of the Massachusetts Senate. He was also president of the University of Massachusetts but was forced to resign in 2003 for refusing to answer questions about his fugitive brother in a congressional hearing. Before Bulger ran off as a fugitive with his various mistresses, he was involved with former fashion model and waitress Lindsay Sear, who eventually became his common-law wife in the 1960s. They had 1 son, Douglas Glenn Sear, born 1967, but the boy died at age 6 from Reye's syndrome, after experiencing a severe allergic reaction to aspirin. When Douglas died, Sear claimed that Bulger was devastated. Movies of the various movies and documentaries that were made about or inspired by Bulger, Martin Scorsese's character Frank Costello, played by Jack Nicholson, in The Departed, 2006, was loosely based on Bulger's life of crime. In 2015 Johnny Depp played the criminal in the biopic, Black Mass, also starring Joel Edgerton as FBI agent John Connolly and Benedict Cumberbatch as William Bulger. We are producing videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays here on the channel. If you liked it, don't forget to leave your like and activate the notification bell to stay on top of all the news. I'll wait for you in the next video. But before leaving the channel, let me tell you, just one more story. I'll leave it at the end for you to click and watch.